All right, welcome to another episode of Why This Beer. Join us as we discuss all the things that make our craft beer scene unique and the people that help sculpt these great brews. I'm Azlan Graves of Main Street Brewing, and as always, joined by Darren Binema of Neighborhood Brewing in Yellow Dog Penticton.
What's up?
And today we're branching outside of beautiful British Columbia and over to Alberta. We've got Jonas from Cabin Brewing joining us. Hello, Jonas.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on the show. Yeah,
thanks so much.
Am I your first Alberta guest?
Alberta guest.
Yeah.
Nice.
And yeah, Jonas and I met, I think back when we both had winning IPAs at the Canada Beer Awards. And from there started sharing
Small
yeast
flex.
and sharing brews. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to get you on the show. Nice to see you face to face again after many years. Yeah, we like to start this off with just telling everybody a bit about yourself, what got you into beer, and how you started out.
Yeah, sure. So we started up Cabin just about 6 years ago. We're just coming up on our 6th anniversary. So what kind of got me into brewing was homebrewing. Started doing that in 2012, and just joined the local homebrew club. Met a bunch of people with common interests, and started brewing. And the nerdy side of me just loved it. It's it's a great balance, harmony of art and science. So
Yeah.
I've got, my left brain and my right brain are always battling each other for top spot. But like the previous career I was doing was sound engineering, so kind of similar in a sense where there is a science to it for sure, but also a big creative element. So that just lured me in, and started kind of getting into craft beer at the time as well. Phillips, from, as I'm sure you know, out in BC, was making a big push into Alberta. Their beers were available kind of everywhere.
They went widespread quick. Yeah.
So Hop Circle was like one of my first experiences with IPA, modern day IPA. First taste of it was like, what is this? And then it's one of those things where the next day I'm like, I kind of actually want to try that again. And it's just something about it, like the bitter pininess, Windex kind of flavor was somehow, I was craving that. And then, the nerdy part of me was like, I wonder how this is made. So went on to Amazon. I bought a Mr. Beer kit for like $50, and it's like this comes with this plastic 8-liter keg cask looking thing. And cans of extract, liquid malt extract. And, you heat that up with some water on your stove, throw it in there, cool it down, throw some yeast in. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, you got beer. It was, pretty horrible
how many people
tasting.
Start is that Mr. Beer kit.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that a few times now. And it's, a funny thing. Like, those things are for anybody who doesn't know, like, look that up. Get your beer friend one of those for Christmas, just as a novelty. They're hilarious.
It's pretty janky for sure.
And then 5 years later they might open a brewery.
Exactly.
But so I tasted the final product, and it was pretty awful. And so then I just kept wanting to make it better. How do I make this better? And like, you can go and buy grains at your local homebrew shop. You can buy malted barley, and you can crush it, and like, mind blown. So that just kind of progressed and went down the rabbit hole. Started entering homebrew competitions across the country, winning some medals, and it just kind of spurred me on. And I was ready for a career change in 2014. So and the brewery scene in Calgary was booming then. Lots of new breweries opening up. That was the heyday. So I ended up getting hired by Wild Rose Brewing here in Calgary.
Okay.
Nice.
With no professional brewing experience, just a lot of good words from friends and people in the industry that I was networking with, and I got hired on as a brewer there. Brewed there almost 4 years. And then
wow. How was that adjustment from going from like homebrewing into like, did you go straight to brewing? Like, was that working from stovetop brews to an industrial space?
They hired me as a brewer. Like I didn't start on the packaging line. I was doing a lot of kegging and cleaning kegs and stuff and running the filter and transfers and that sort of thing, cellaring.
Yeah.
And then shadowed probably about 2 months. Shadowed some of the other brewers there with a lot more experience on the brew house. And I think I did my first brew around 2.5 months after getting hired there.
Wow.
For solo brew.
Yeah.
But the transition, because towards the end of my home brewing career, I'd moved into all grain, so I was mashing in a 5-gallon cooler.
Yeah.
And boiling outside on my balcony. I was living in a small 2-bedroom condo.
Yeah.
And but my entire storage room was taken up with homebrew gear. It's pretty rad. But I mean, strangely enough, a lot of it translates, and I find it, it's same but different. It's just on a much bigger scale. You're using pumps to move liquid. You're using pressure to move liquid, rather than lifting 20 kilos of boiling wort and risking losing all the skin on your feet.
Weirdly just as dangerous sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
cool. That must be a big operation there, like I'm guessing like 60 to 100 heck kettle kind of thing.
60 heck, 4-vessel system. It was pretty cool, actually. I wouldn't call it like fully automated. You still had to work the panel. A lot of almost every valve on the brew house was pneumatic valve, so you could just open it and close it from a touch screen. But we would do triple brews, so 180 heck a day. Kind of thing. Their tanks were either single, double, triple, so 60, 120 or 180. I was working there before they got acquired by Sleeman, so I think it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 months after I left is when the announcement was made. So still independent. One of the oldest, probably second oldest craft brewery in Alberta after Big Rock.
That sounds about
I remember before craft beer was like very big on the West Coast, my dad would talk about driving to Alberta to go like ice climbing in like the Banff area, and specifically to pick up Big Rock as well. It's like that was the light at the end of the tunnel, the prize to come back with the case of Big Rock.
The big case of Big Rock.
I mean, they were kind of the only game in town for a long time. And every single bar had trad or grasshopper or both on tap. But it's different now. Like there's a lot more breweries in Alberta, and you don't see Big Rock at every single bar anymore.
Calgary, I remember having like a pretty strong homebrew scene for quite a while too. Like is there like it's a funny like acronym or like name for the homebrew club there?
Yeah, it's the Yeast Wranglers.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. But like,
they used to hold the meetings at Wild Rose, so the WR in Wranglers was kind of like the Wild Rose logo.
Nice. Nice. And I just remember like when I was homebrewing and all of a sudden finding out about homebrew competitions, I was like, man, everybody in Calgary seems to be like way more after it than BC as far as the homebrew scene.
I don't know what it's like now. I haven't gone to a meeting in a few years, but it was, when I was in there, it was intense. Like there were some people in that club that were, brewing a lot, like brewing weekly kind of thing, or maybe even twice a week. Like, it was pretty intense.
Dedicated for sure.
This one guy, Paul Heslop, he won, I think, Canadian brewer like homebrewer of the year, I don't know, 3 or 4 times.
Crazy.
Like awesome brewer and brews a ton and really knows his stuff.
Just mail-in beer all over this great nation.
I think at that time too, though, like you kind of, obviously craft beer wasn't as big of a thing, so it's like if you wanted to drink those the beer you wanted, you had to make it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
For sure.
know if there is as much of a homebrew scene anymore. Like, I don't know. It's not. I'm definitely not getting asked as much to provide yeast or malt for
Yeah, I
a
think
regular
it's
at the bar.
definitely less active than it was a few years back. Even one of the main kind of sponsors of a lot of the competitions and like kind of a hub for a lot of the meetings. It was a homebrew shop, and it closed down last year, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I think the owners wanted to retire, and it was just one of those things. It's just shut it down. Yeah.
It's a hard job to take on. So you're barely paying yourself for that kind of thing. Yeah.
And a lot of their biggest customers went on to open breweries, so
yeah,
they lost a lot of their cash flow.
Yeah.
So with being a founding member of Cabin, what were some of your like biggest hurdles, into opening your own space? That you worked at Wild Rose. I'm sure you got a lot of experience there. What were the things you didn't expect?
I think the biggest challenge we had was finding the right spot, like physical location.
Right.
I know, like we were definitely looking in the area that we eventually ended up opening in, but there were a few really, really good spots that we had that kind of slipped through our fingers. I've got two partners, so three of us. It's our first time ever being business owners, and when we would go into a prospective space, we'd have some, not demands, but we knew what we wanted. And
expectations.
And looking back, there's maybe a couple things we could have been a little bit more lax on, and not draw a line in the sand and say, no, we need this. But
Jonas needed his office being southeast facing. There was no wiggle room.
I need corner windows. But I mean, we ended up in a space that was smaller than we originally wanted, but it's one of those things, like, I don't know if we went really big at the beginning, because our original business plan was a brew house twice the size, a space 2 or 3 times the size we had. It's one of those things, like, I don't know, like maybe everything happened for a reason, and we were in a smaller space. We started out smaller and kind of grew organically, and it just worked.
Yeah.
And
what is the size of your brew house at this point?
It's a 10 barrel. So we're getting we've got 3 different like cast out sizes, because we've got doubles, so 20 barrel tanks, and then we've got quads, but the first quad that we bought was a little bit too small, so we actually had to reduce our brew size for that one tank. And then the rest of the quads now they're a bit on the large side, so we can actually brew a bit more. So let's say on average we're knocking out about 14 hectoliters of wort every brew.
Yeah.
Maybe a lager you can get a bit more out of it on a lower ABV beer. Sweet.
So the one smaller quad that we have, we just brew lagers into that tank.
Nice.
That's what I was gonna ask. I'm like, do you scale individually per tank, or
no? That's turned into our lager tank. It also has a really small 4-inch tri-clamp dry hop port. That our newer tanks have hinged doors with and it's easy to release the pressure on them. And we had a newer, inexperienced brewer crank off.
For all of my cellar staff, just don't listen to this part. They're cramming 20 kgs into an 1.5 inch port.
You just gotta go slow. That's what I always say. Just go slow.
Yeah, the Venturi effect.
That's right.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's nice. That's a good size.
So you had a blowover.
We had the actual the tri-clamp got taken off too quickly, and there was still pressure in the tank, and the cover basically flew off and almost smoked someone in the head.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Watch out.
And if you do have a blowover, they're really hard to seal back up.
Yeah.
You just kind of got to let it go. And, we're doing it on ladders and stuff. So, some safety concerns there.
For sure. Yeah. Nice. Just generally, like, what kind of is your output for the year? Just, I don't really know Cabin too well. Like, how much beer are you guys making per year, roughly?
Last calendar year, we did about 6,200 hectoliters.
Okay.
So this year we'll I don't think we're going to hit 7, but I think close, within a couple hundred hectoliters this year.
Sweet.
So we're up, which is great. I mean,
that's
in this economy.
Congratulations for this year. Yeah.
In this economy. Yeah.
That's a big move.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you guys also, I was like, Super Saturation is in 12 packs when I was in Calgary, like a month ago.
Yeah. We went into shorties.
I was like 12 packs of hazy IPA. Is this the future? Calgary's way out there. This is great.
Honestly, kind of hope it's the future.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. Like, I love my tall boys, but especially
you're moving
in the
units
summer,
and small product that's always cold.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was just gonna say, in the summer, most of the time. Well, not most of the time. Depends how thirsty I am, but sometimes, the last third of the beer is it's warm and it's not nice. So short cans, especially, I'm not getting any younger. I feel like I get hungover way easier at like 2 beers, and I've got a headache the next day. So putting it in smaller portions is I think it's a good move. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's mainly about getting enough cracks. It's like exactly. It's like if I can get 4 cracks in what I typically get 2 cracks in, and like
Yeah, I just heard recently that that's kind of a trend in the States. Is a lot of breweries are moving to the 12-ounce 355 ml format, and 6-packs, 12-packs.
Yeah, I see a lot more 15 packs.
15 packs.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Or the 19.2 ounce cans.
Yeah, that's the other option for sure. The stovepipes,
the super cans.
Yeah.
Blind Man Brewery actually does 9% a couple beers a year in those big cans. Yeah.
Apparently, Voodoo Ranger is the biggest SKU for New Belgium in that format.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And that's like an 8 or 9% beer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I paid $19 for 1 can of that in Vegas last year. $19 US. Yeah.
Oh. Oof!
Wow.
Yeah, that's an experience.
It was a 1 beer evening.
Yeah.
So I guess we should talk a bit about the beer though. So
let's talk about Super Saturation. Yeah.
Let's talk about Super Saturation. Yeah. Like you have so many awards for hop driven beers. Also a couple stouts. It seems. Don't want to not acknowledge that. But what's been your approach? Super Saturation's been around since you guys opened. What's been your approach, and how has it evolved over the 6 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was one of 4 beers that we opened with. Originally on our business plan, we were gonna just have 2 core beers, and then just have a bunch of rotationals, one-off, seasonals, whatever you want to call them. And Super Saturation was one of 2 of our first one-off beers.
Look at this. It's like golden, light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super light malt bill.
Yeah, very pale.
This is the can, if anyone is wondering.
Also, I was going to say, like, the artwork has got great consistency. I remember talking with you about this a while back, and you're like, retro nostalgia. That's like, it looks...
Yeah.
To me, it looks like and this is in a positive way, like a cleaning bottle from like the 1970s.
Right.
Like a spray paint or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Daughter Creative. They're our design agency here in Calgary. But they use inspiration from all these retro things. Like this kind of reminds me of those old like pullover K-way jackets.
Oh yeah,
You know, the ones that you
yeah.
fold into its own pocket kind of
yeah.
thing.
I had one of
They've
those.
used like VHS tapes, like, you know, the blank VHS tapes you go buy at the store for inspiration for some can designs, and yeah,
Nice.
always super fun.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, so originally Super Saturation was supposed to be, like I said, a one-off, and we were gonna change the hops up every time. So, you know, this was back in the day when we, you know, very young, we didn't have any hop contracts. Certain hops were still really hard to get a hold of. Even hops like Citra were really hard to get on the spot market.
Yeah.
So this was one of those ones. It was like, oh, if we could get 20 kgs of whatever, let's brew another version of Super Saturation with it. And it immediately took off. You know, within the first week, we were selling more of that beer than anything else. So we're like, okay, well that's good. I mean, it's a hit. This is working. Something's working here.
Yeah.
And it almost became our beer, like our beer. Like people would come into the tap room and say, what do you have that I don't like hoppy beer? What do you have that's, you know, tastes like beer? And we didn't have anything at that point because, you know, when you have 4 tanks and you can't brew lagers because they take way too long. Yeah. And so our taproom staff were like, try this beer. It's hoppy, but maybe in a different way than you think. Yeah. It's, you know, a very aroma forward, very hop flavor forward, but it's not bitter. And, you know, I think a lot of people associate hoppy with bitter. So,
well, I feel like 6 years ago too, like people were, at least like in Western Canada, were still finding out about hazy IPAs and trying to figure out where that landed on their palate. Like, you know, their idea of hoppy was bitter.
Yeah.
Not tropical.
Yeah.
Fruity.
Yeah, totally. That's a good point too. Like, especially when you open the brewery even 6 years ago. I mean, haze is what was pretty popular obviously back then too, but still like pretty nascent, I would say, in Western Canada. I don't know if that's true with the Calgary beer scene.
I would say so. There weren't too. I'm trying to remember. Like, I don't think there were too many breweries brewing them. The one that comes to top of mind is Blind Man's in New England. Like, I know for sure they were brewing one, but I can't off the top of my head think of anyone else that was. Right. And you know, it's even like West Coast IPAs, people thought it was a fad, and they'll be popular for a year and then they'll go away. Yeah. But yeah, here we are. This beer is like 50% of our production. So
don't go away. Please.
Proof is in the pudding.
Please don't go away. Keep the lights on for us.
That's right. So when you keep telling people, no, it's not going anywhere. It's perfect. Yeah. It's super soft and very super fruity. It's great.
Yeah, that's one thing I was worried about, because we in Calgary, like, all of our water is mountain runoff, so it's like super high in mineral content. Yeah. So I was worried, you know, how are we going to get this super soft mouthfeel and not get that like chalky kind of character that you can get if there's too much mineral character. It took a while, but you know, we had to dial in our water profile. We don't use RO water or anything like that. We just use a carbon filter to get the chlorine out. So we add mostly chloride, calcium chloride, to get that softer mouthfeel and a little bit of salinity that you taste in there. But a lot of it is fermentation character. We played around with, you know, a bunch of different yeast strains. Grain bill has evolved over the years, and you know, as nerds, we like to always make things better. So if we can try something like, there's this new ingredient, like, why don't we try it in a small batch and do a triangle taste panel and see, does it actually improve the beer?
Yeah, exactly.
The triangle taste panel too is like such a good way to just like remove your bias. Getting somebody else who's like outside of the panel to just like set it up for you. And then like all of a sudden you're just like, man, your mind plays tricks on you. And especially if you and you have your bias all the time, and it's like nice to remove that and just be like, okay, can I detect it? Is it there? Okay, this is what I think it is. And then you're like, was it a positive or was it a negative? It's great. Like,
yeah. And it's great for getting people's perspectives who aren't tasting the beers every day and, know the beers inside and out. Just getting, a person's perspective who might not, have the finer tasting
100%.
palate that we have,
Yeah, pull in that accountant, pull in that marketing manager. It's great because they're going to give you way more unbiased feedback.
Yeah.
Sometimes
exactly.
it can be pretty harsh, but it can be pretty good too, right? They're also drinking your beer, so why wouldn't they have it as valid an opinion as you? Really?
Exactly.
It's like everybody in a panel has a valid voice, and like there's no wrong answers, because it's like I get so stuck within like what I'm like, oh, I already know the hops that are in here and they're supposed to taste like this, so I'm stuck within that lexicon. It's like sometimes getting a yes, we should all use like a common lexicon, but at the same time getting that like fresh voice where you're like, I never thought about it that way. You're totally right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it feels pretty good when you're right too.
That's the best part, obviously.
You're like, I agree.
Yeah. No, I knew it.
So for yeast for this beer, do you have like a house yeast that you're using for it, or have you like evolved it over time?
We use Escarpment Foggy London.
Oh, there you go.
Which
there you go, Angus. You heard it here first. I'm very familiar.
It's great. It's a workhorse. We've never had any like diacetyl issues with it. We've never had it stall out on fermentations. We can harvest it, pretty much bang on every time. We just, as a rule of thumb, kind of replace it every 10 to 12 generations. But I'm sure we could take it, 20, probably 30 even, without having to change it out. And we get the micro tested on it with Raft Brew Labs, just to ensure batch to batch we're not, if something does go wrong, we're not carrying it forward into future beers. But it's love the strain, love the profile. It ferments quickly. It's very reliable and predictable. Yeah.
Does it finish pretty dry? Like, it comes across as like a perceived sweetness, but is it like leaving you some sugar there, or is it like going pretty dry on you?
It's like less attenuating than a Cali ale,
right?
But I find it really responds well to mash temperature.
Yeah.
So I think this beer in particular we mash at it's either 68 or 69, so pretty high.
Yeah.
And that is to give it some of that residual sweetness.
Yeah.
But not too much. Like, it's not cloying or anything. I think it has a decent amount of bitterness to balance.
Yeah, it's about finding that right balance, right? Yeah, but you don't want it to finish sweet, that like people don't want to have the whole can. But I mean, it is like a hazy IPA. You want that that sweetness kind of denotes that fruitiness, right? Like all those tropical fruits that we like are just like full of sugar, so it kind of tricks the palate into thinking that it's sweet. So that is
not to mention with with this strain too, I feel like there's like a glycerol production thing that happens that just like gives this implied sweetness and body that like plays off the chloride that you're talking about, and then like higher mash temp, and you can like layer these things so that like you have a full rich beer without it being like too much chloride to the point that it's like pulling saliva, which is like always like it happens, but definitely not here. It's awesome. Yeah, it's really nice.
Some cheers. Thank you.
It's got to have Citra in it too, right? This has to have Citra.
It's the Holy Trinity: Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Nice.
Uh,
And has it been that since that was the first seasonal rotation of this and the last seasonal rotation of this?
Yeah.
The first one actually used, I think we had Brew 1 hops.
Oh yeah. You can get it now again.
Nice.
From Yakima Chief.
Yeah.
Apparently.
And I don't know if it was the lot. I didn't love them in this beer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic. They're so good, and they're like another beer that we'll talk about in a moment. I'm sure also uses those 3 hops, but yet they taste completely different. The Sunshine Rain also has a couple other different hops, but I don't know. They work so well together, and you can, if you have one peak out a little bit more than the other, it just completely changes the flavor profile.
Yeah.
But like Citra's super bright, Simcoe's kind of piney, Mosaic is like the darker fruit, like blue. I get a lot of blueberry from it.
Yeah.
So it's just adds so much depth.
Do you kind of choose where in the brewing process you're going to use those hops? Like you're like, okay, Citra's going to go hot side, or Simcoe's only dry hop, or do you kind of change that depending on, like this is your hazy pale ale, but maybe for your like Sunshine Rain, maybe Simcoe more dominant forward or something like that? Is that kind of how you think about it?
Yeah, for sure. So in super saturation, it's definitely more Citra Simcoe heavy, and Mosaic is just kind of more of a background note, just because we want that more bright tropical character,
right?
Which you can get. I find like we've had the privilege of doing hop selection the last couple of years, and we've gone for a more modern Simcoe, which is like pineapple forward, rather than piney.
Yeah,
citrusy. It's more traditional. So you get the really bright tropical character from the Citra, and then the pineapple from the Simcoe, and then the Mosaic just kind of brings it all together, brings the room together, as the dude would say.
Nice.
Yeah. And so like hopping rates over the 6 years, how have those changed? That's the big thing I want to know. You started at like
hop
they never go down.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of cryo offset. You never know. Hop oils.
It's definitely gone up. And just certain techniques.
You got to keep it super saturated.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep it super saturated. That's right. Yeah. Nice. It's and just going from homebrewing, or place like Wild Rose, which is it's a bigger ship to steer, and there's an accounting department, and it's like you can't just do whatever you want. It's like you got to sort of stick within some parameters. Whereas running our own shop, it's like, well, this beer is going to be expensive, but screw it, let's give it a shot. So I mean, obviously there is diminishing returns at some point with hopping rates. So I think we kind of found the sweet spot.
Nice.
I'd say it's probably around 10 grams per liter.
Oh yeah.
9 to 10. Yeah.
Nice.
Like
that's up there.
All said and done, that's hot side and cold side.
Do you use like other hop products in this beer, or do you kind of keep this to like classic T90 pellets across the board?
Currently, classic T90.
Yeah.
We've experimented with cryo in the past. The Yakima Chief Hyper Boost, that's the cold side.
Yeah,
dry
701.
Hopping, 701. Yeah. So we've tried with that. It's just one of those things. So interesting thing with the 701, we did the taste panel, the triangle taste panel thing. I preferred the T90 version, but the overwhelming majority either didn't have a preference or preferred the Dynaboost one, or sorry, Hyperboost.
Hyperboost one. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And we did get a little bit more yield. So it might be one of those things that we've got a lot of hops to get through with our contract, but with time we might start using more of those advanced products, because they do. If the majority of people can't tell the difference, then why not?
Well, and you get a couple extra kegs or a keg out of it, like that's great, right?
Yeah.
Pays for
turns
itself.
turns into a lot over the course of the year, and I think that's what a lot of people are underestimating on these advanced products. Is it's like, especially people traditionally used to view advanced products as a macro, like, cheat kind of thing. And I think there's like a lot of room, especially in smaller brew houses, to be using these things. To an extra 50-liter keg is an astronomical amount of efficiency on a smaller system, you know.
Oh yeah,
like,
100%.
And you carry that over 300 brews, and you're like, dang.
Yeah. The accountants would be happy.
Yeah. But you kind of segued very nicely for us from the super saturation into the Sunshine Rain, which is your like West Coast style IPA, right? So maybe you can tell us about
the one I've been
sipping on.
Been sipping on here.
Nice. Yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This one is my pride and joy. It's probably my favorite beer of the ones that we consistently make year round. So yeah, it's a West Coast IPA, 6.7%. This was one of two core beers that we started with. The basis for this beer was didn't come up with the idea, but I was inspired by Balebreaker's Top Cutter, which is a West Coast IPA. Balebreaker, if anybody doesn't know, is down in Yakima. It's right in the middle of the hop fields. It's an amazing brewery down there.
Yeah,
and they're like, it was life changing when I went down there for the first time. I think it was in 2015. Summer of 2015. And went down there with my wife and tried this beer, and it was like super low amount of crystal, so very, very light in color, but very, very hop forward. The malt bill kind of took a back seat to the hops, and it was the first time I experienced like really, really fresh hop character in a beer, and the malt just kind of got out of the way and let the hops be front and center. And I was like, oh my God, this is life changing.
It's like a natural stage. And like, the other thing that Jonas glossed over is the fact that, so we went to Balebreaker, was inspired by their Top Cutter, came back, made Sunshine Rain, and then has won 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023, 2024 has placed in the Alberta Craft Beer Awards.
Decent.
With this beer.
I don't know what happened in 2021, but
we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
Everybody had long COVID or something.
That's right. I must have had COVID when we were, doing sensory on that batch or something.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a super clean beer. Very light, like in color, obviously too. It does remind me of Balebreaker, for sure. Like that's kind of their style of beer, and like it's so saturated, naturally, saturated in hop flavor. Like it really is like your first note and your end note, right? On this beer, it's like, and like there's a bitterness there, but it's not lingering, which I like. It's like the more modern style West Coast IPA, I would say, which is it's great. I really enjoyed it. I had one yesterday and it was great.
Jonas was a real craft philanthropist and sent us out with a healthy amount of beer. So we've been well versed.
Can't just send two beers,
We would appreciate anything.
A lot of empty space in that box.
I guess the question for this one is like, how is it different than super saturation besides it being like a West Coast IPA? Are you guys using just like a classic Chico strain, or or like just use
another plug for Escarpment? It's the Escarpment Cali Ale.
Nice.
And again, it's a workhorse. And it just rips through these beers. So we actually use it in this beer, and we have like a West Coast style pale ale that we make as well, that we use it in.
Sweet.
So we kind of flip flop harvesting between these two. Yeah, like I said earlier, it also has
right?
Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah.
So it also has the Holy Trinity. I'd say this one definitely has more Mosaic than Supersat and more Simcoe.
Okay.
And we also use Centennial hops that we get from Crosby hops, which I love. I keep repeating this word bright, but that's a hop character that I love, like kind of lemony, punchy, bright.
Yeah.
That kind of like New World Centennial is kind of like leaning into like pineapple a bit too, isn't it? Like,
yeah, there's definitely some tropical that sneaks in there, which I'd say Sunshine Rain has a decent amount of tropical. It's not just pine and resin,
Yeah.
No, it's definitely like that blueberry
New
mosaic
World
thing for
West
sure.
Coast.
Yeah.
No, sweet.
So and this beer for the hop flavor, it has definitely more in the kettle. Like there's a much bigger bittering charge. There's a 15-minute hop, pretty heavy 15-minute hop addition, and there's a pretty substantial whirlpool as well. This beer actually there's more hops in this beer than super saturation.
Oh wow!
Like it for as far as grams per liter, the dry hop's actually bigger. Yeah,
that's why it's so good.
And
case cracked.
And when you're talking about like how like when you went to Bale Breaker, the big breakthrough was like the idea that it's a really light malt bill. How are you achieving that here? Like how are you setting the stage to make sure your Holy Trinity is in the best light?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a Pilsner based malt. And we actually used to use 2-row. But we just got a silo installed this summer.
Nice.
So now it makes sense from a bunch of different ways to just use the same base malt in almost everything.
Yeah.
So we switched up to Pilsner. We had to make a few little tweaks to the grain bill, but nothing substantial. There's a little bit of Red Shed malt there. It's
nice.
The Rocky Mountain, I believe, is in this, which is their kind of equivalent to a Munich malt.
Okay.
Cool. So there's a little bit of that. There is some chit malt from Hogarth Malting, which is another smaller maltster in Alberta. Nice. And there's also a very, very small amount of light crystal. I think it's like 1.5%.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Just for a little sweetness that won't ferment out.
A little bit of sweetness, a little bit of color. We don't want our IPA looking like a Pilsner necessarily.
Right.
And it's good to have a little bit of a malt backbone, but mostly transparent. Like when you're tasting it, you're not really tasting the malt. You might get little hints of it here and there, but it's definitely we want the hops to shine in this beer. Yes.
Well, we touched a little bit on your awards, diving deeper into that. Most recently you got gold at the Canada Beer Cup for Fuego. And this was the unaged stainless version. This is an annual beer you guys brew, from what I can understand. So everybody stay tuned for, I'm sure you've got a gold medal beer in barrel waiting to be released. What does the oak and aging bring, and what can people look forward to when that comes out?
So we actually don't have any in a barrel right now.
Azlan.
But we will.
You had a hot inside tip.
We plan on putting some in like in the next month or two. It's just the unaged version isn't moving as quickly as we'd like, so we don't want to brew more of it until we're we can sell more of it. But we've done three iterations of it in oak. We've done bourbon barrels, tequila barrels, and is it cognac? I think cognac was the last one. So yeah, so the base beer, it's a Mexican hot chocolate stout. So it's got cocoa, vanilla, chipotle chilies, uh, guajillo chilies, and ancho chilies. So it's got some spice to it.
Yeah.
It's also,
Smoky.
10.5, 11%. Yeah, a little bit smoky, a little bit spicy, quite not boozy, but it's, 11%. So
Yeah.
it's strong.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things about it is when you're drinking it, it's when you're drinking just, a straight up 11% beer, it's going to feel quite warming. But this one, it's like warming from the alcohol, warming from the chilies, and it just kind of, there's this really weird transition point where it's like the alcohol merges with the chilies, and it's awesome.
That's right.
I love it. But yeah, then the oak, generally we'll throw more chilies in the barrel. Sometimes we'll throw some vanilla beans in there. But the oak, because it generally sits for 10 to 12 months in the oak.
Yeah.
And we find that just kind of like mellows it. Everything just gets more harmonious, and then you also get the tannins from the oak and the flavors that you tend to get from oak, like vanilla, and that sort of thing. So it just makes it quite a bit more complex.
Sweet.
Like the stainless, I love the stainless version, but the oak age version is something else. It's almost tastes like a completely different beer.
Nice. Yeah, because sometimes it can be more cohesive in the end. Even though you're adding even more ingredients on top of it, but just has that time to kind of like get all together.
Mellow and meld, and like, it's like that idea of like stew being better the next day.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. We saw recently that you guys did a collaboration with Parkside, who are friends of ours. You kind of brought your Super Saturation and their Dreamboat beers together as like a collab beer. How did you guys go about formulating that collab beer? Did you just all end up using Citra? Like, what was the the thing in the end of it? They make a really good hazy, for those in Alberta that don't know about Parkside Brewing that might be listening. Yeah, they make a really great hazy IPA, and this is your hazy pale ale. Yeah.
One of my favorite pizza spots now. I'm just like, every time I'm there, I'm like, you got Dreamboat? That's great. It's a chance for me to like try something else.
Yeah, it's great.
Keep me in check.
Unfortunately, I really wanted to go visit them. I was supposed to go out for the Canada Beer Cup a few weeks back, but ended up with a mountain biking injury like 2 days before I was supposed to fly out to Vancouver.
Oh, no.
So my two partners went, said it was great.
You missed out.
I know. Yeah. So I got to plan a trip out there for sure. So I know their Dreamboat is Citra Azaka, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds right. Tastes like that. Yeah.
We didn't use any Citra in this beer.
You're crazy.
I know. We didn't actually use any of the hops that either of us use in the two beers. So I don't want to say it was more of a like branding marketing opportunity, but it was also a chance for us to try out some new hops that we haven't tried.
Yeah.
And just, take our two flagship beers and come up with a cool name and a cool can design. And, use some of the knowledge we have about brewing hazy beers, but just brew something completely different. So we actually used Nectaron, Ilani hops, and Centennial.
Whoa.
Ilani.
Ilani.
Yeah.
Ilani.
I think that's probably the first time those three hops have ever been put in a beer.
Yeah, probably.
Right? There's like a bingo card somewhere that you crossed off with that combination. That's cool.
But yeah, it turned out really well. It was very unique. And we tried out a new yeast strain with it as well, or new to us anyways, the Escarpment Lallemand Pomona.
Okay.
Like their dry yeast strain with that beer.
Yeah.
And it was super unique. Really like tropical forward, but also had a little bit of dank, which I don't hate it. It's not usually expected in a hazy, but it was something that it just kind of worked.
Yeah.
And especially with
Sometimes
the esters.
having that traditional backbone of that dank character can just like, I don't know, it just fills it out, makes it less one dimensional.
Yeah.
It's like that idea of like adding, a small amount of CTZ or whatever to your hazy IPA.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of that old school.
Harkens back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can like fill in that, like where something can be like really tropical and like top notey. It can like fill in that mid note, I find, and give like a little bitterness throughout but not in a bad way, just like a little spice to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was fun. They're a great group of people. We had a lot of fun. And
Sam's no fun to hang out with. He's okay. Cool. What's exciting you? Like, what beers are you making? Or like, what's the next beer project that's got you excited these days?
What are we doing coming up here?
Or maybe a new ingredient that you're using that you enjoyed, or something like that. That other brewers would be interested to hear what Cabin's after.
We have been brewing with some New Zealand hops lately, and I am in love with Motueka. It's so good.
It's the best.
It's
just
so
like
good.
lime zest.
Yeah, and it's super unique.
Low alpha and like
just
like you don't get that hop burn.
We beer is coming out tomorrow as of the recording date here. But we just brewed a small hazy IPA, so it's a 4.6% ABV hazy IPA, and it was all New Zealand hops.
Nice.
So Motueka, Nelson, and Riwaka, I think.
Yeah,
cool.
And it's like the first sample I took off the tank after we dry hopped it was like mind blowing. Like it was like opening a can of fruit salad, but with 3 times the amount of aroma. It was crazy, and it lasted all the way through to packaging. And cracked a can this evening when I got home, and it was like, holy crap, this might be my favorite beer of the year. It was border hop, but now I think it's this beer.
Nice.
And with that Motueka, like, where are you using it? Are you talking like
mostly
Motueka
dry
T90?
Yeah,
dry hop.
T90. Yeah. We haven't used it yet, but we're brewing another hazy IPA for our anniversary coming up, and we ordered some Motueka hop keef from Freestyle Hops.
Yeah.
Which is a New Zealand hop supplier. Excited to try that out. We haven't used that product yet, but it's similar from what I understand to a Hyper Boost. It's it's a cold side extract that you can put in as late as the bright tank, before you carbonate the beer, kind of thing.
That's another hop oil, like similar to those other ones. I think Azlan and I have both tried it and really have enjoyed it. It expresses really well in the product, I found, which is sweet. It's exactly what you want. Nothing to stick out.
And the ability to have like lot selection on it, like down the road, if it's something that you feel is fits your profile, like it's a pretty cool product.
Yeah. But in general, all those New Zealand hops have been like, really cool. I found recently the Nectaron. We did a beer with that, and it's like heavily Nectaron beer. It's great. It's kind of like that early new like Nelson Sauvin stuff without being like too diesel-y or like too like it just is just fruit. It's just like this nice like guava, lychee, like very tropical fruit. It's one of those hops where like the description actually matches the hop.
Right.
You're getting all these like, for brewers, you always get like, oh, this is the new hop. And it's like, what is it? I always joke like, oh, what are the tasting descriptions? Mandarin orange, pineapple, and like, that's it. You're like, wow, it could be any of these hops. They're always the same thing. But this one actually like lives up to these cool, like kumquat, lychee, guava, descriptors that you get.
Exotic tropical
like
fruit.
it really is like gooseberry. Like wow, yeah, it actually does taste like that. It's cool. So
Yeah.
Shout out to those guys making some really awesome hops.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Freestyle's got some cool stuff, and New Zealand unique. In general.
Yeah, just different, aroma profiles than what 90% of the beers that you smell have. 95%. Like, just it's nice. It's it's refreshing to crack a can and be like, whoa, I haven't smelled that maybe ever. Or in a long time. Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing is like Motueka is like Chuck's sauce, like cross-pollinated. Like it's like it is a very traditional hop, just like, and it's a pure showcase of terroir in the most like exaggerated example. Like I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah. Or like New Zealand Cascade, same thing. It's like they're nothing alike. Like it's not like Cascade in America at all. Totally
not
different.
At all.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Super cool.
There was one hop growing company that had a name for it, but I don't think it took off. Tahiki? Yeah, Tahiki was like the name for like New Zealand Cascade for like a few years back.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing is like Cascade grown in New Zealand is completely different.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was like sweet citrus, like candied tangerine, like
yeah. It deserves its own name.
It's
not really like New Zealand Cascade. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You at Cabin are brewing with a lot of hop forward beers. And that's something you probably see pretty regularly because especially with your size and scale, you're able to play around a bit more. Seeing those things lot to lot, difference to difference, year to year, like how do you keep that consistency? How do you play around with it?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think one of the best things we've been able to do for consistency's sake, especially brewing so many hop forward beers, is hop selection. And just being able to have access to the same lot for the entire year. And, when you're buying on the spot market, you could buy, 4 boxes and get one lot, and then the next lot you get, it's like, is this even the same hop? Like, even when you're at the table smelling 4 or 5 different lots of Simcoe, it's like, how are these called the same thing? Like, there's so many variances, and like, some are super tropical and some are super piney. And so just kind of having brewed with these hops for a few years, we kind of know what we want. So it's funny, this year when we went down to selection, we actually picked one of the hops wasn't ready. Mosaic was a bit late this year, but Citra and Simcoe we actually selected, and it's all blind selection. Like you don't know what what farms they're from or what state they're from until after. But we actually, the Citra and Simcoe that we picked were from the exact same farms that we had picked last year.
Sweet.
So it was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like we know what we like, and it's awesome that we did that. So but yeah, I mean, and I'm pretty sure most hop companies now are allowing hop selection to some extent, whether you go down to Yakima to do it, or they ship you pellets or cores. You can do it at the brewery with your brew team. It's becoming a lot more accessible, I think, for breweries of any size to do it, and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, we talked about it also recently with Simon from Nelson about it. It's like, it's great. It gets your whole team on board. It's awesome to try to pick your best hops for the year, and then that consistency throughout the year is everything. Like, it's so easy. Then if you make changes to something else, that at least your hops are going to be consistent throughout the whole year. I can change something with the malt bill, but like I'll notice that on the next batch because my hops are the same. Whereas if you're changing your hops all the time, anyone that's done hop selection knows that 4 different farms are going to have 4 different versions of Citra. It's
Yeah.
crazy sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and they
like
can be
there's
wildly
obviously
different.
Yeah.
and like depending on the variety, there's obviously like there's consistency, but there's obviously just this like insane variance. And I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about like the wine industry has done such a good job talking about terroir. I feel like the brewery industry maybe needs to, if we can get our demographic to think about that a bit more, Well,
I think that's the difference between the brewing and winery. Like, I mean, we're trying to make a consistent product, ideally year round, right? Like where it's like your consumer knows, like, wow, this is going to be the beer. Like this is super saturation. This is what it tastes like all year round. But like we as brewers have that challenge of like,
Jonas has been making it for 6 years, exactly the same since day one.
Yeah, but that's the challenge for us.
What version
right?
are you on, Jonas?
Yeah.
It's funny. We use this brewing software, Beer 30, and anytime you go in and edit a recipe, if it's been brewed, it'll save that copy. And like you go into that recipe and there's like 40 different versions of it.
So what excites you about the Alberta and then maybe greater, like the Canadian brewing industry these days? You can talk about either or whatever you want to. And then like, or where can we improve as an industry?
Right. I think just I'm always excited about innovation and like what new breweries are gonna come up with, or not just new breweries, but what breweries are gonna come up with. Not just like beer style, but packaging formats, or reaching out to consumers, and just staying relevant. I feel like the industry's changed a lot in the last 10 years, and it's gotten a bit harder to sell beer. Just there's a lot more breweries out there than there were 10 years ago.
Sure.
And also, we can't just make a product and expect it to fly off the shelf, and be sold out in a day anymore. Those are the good days.
Yeah.
So I think it's just forcing people to become more creative.
Yeah.
Not just beer styles, but also like how are you going to market it and sell it. And so I think different formats like that. That was one of the impetus kind of behind putting super saturation into the 355 ml cans, was take something that people love and just present it a little bit differently, and put it in a cool looking box, and it might stand out a little bit better on the shelves, and it's in a little bit more approachable format, that kind of stuff. So that stuff excites me. I think just the evolution of not just beer, but beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, hop waters, alternatives, that kind of thing. The innovation on that side of things is pretty exciting too.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, like the different ways that people are like staying relevant, adapting a different demographic, this and that, like whether it's in format size, whether it's new products. There's like so much transferable skills we all have to create the beverage people want.
For any new brewers getting into the industry, or people that are new to the brewing industry, like what words of wisdom do you have for them to get, either to push them into it, or like what do you have for them?
I think honestly, like just like learn as much as you can about the process. Taste as many beers as you can. A big educational part for me was doing the BJCP exam.
Yeah. Like
the beer judge certification program. Doing there's a few different levels that you can achieve, but I got as far as the tasting exam, so BJCP certified. But that just learning about beer styles and what should be in beer, what shouldn't be in beer. Doing those off flavor tasting kits, those were super interesting and educational. you know, that sort of thing. I love absorbing knowledge, and I just found it so interesting, and it deepened my love for the industry, and I think also, you know, helped me get to where I am today.
Yeah, I recently did my BJCP too, and I felt like I got so much feedback from other like awards that I would enter in, and I was like, okay, well, like where's this feedback coming from? And I found that like doing that program really kind of put me into the seat of like, this is what the judge is looking for, like going into it blind, looking at the style rubric, and then like doing like a judging with someone else. It's like, oh, okay, like this is how your beer is judged. And I found that was like very rewarding to like kind of have that experience, and hopefully like soon and that can put that more into practice of like, okay, how does this beer stand up in that category, and like how can it do better. I would say like not every beer has to fit in the style guidelines, not every beer has to win awards. Like sometimes it just, you can be okay with it living kind of outside, like in not quite as bitter as it's supposed to be, or maybe too hazy for that style or something like that. But you know, the consumer is kind of expecting a certain thing when they pick up your beer, and it says like West Coast IPA or it says pale ale. They want a certain product. So if I can make the best example of that, I think that's gonna, you know, help. You know, I want the consumer to be happy. That's why we all get into it, I think. And then I want it also to, you know, if I can get an award out of it, that's great too. But I found that, yeah, doing the BJCP stuff was like really helpful to kind of put yourself get out of your brewer mindset and more into like a consumer or judge mindset was important, I thought.
For sure. And like even if you get the opportunity to do some judging, like it just changes the way you think about beer.
Yeah.
Not always for the better. Like,
oh man,
you know, sometimes I just want to sit and drink a beer and not think about it. But you know, you do some judging and it's like,
yeah.
You just want to, you know, overanalyze all of it. But
yeah,
I would say that was probably one of the best things I could do just for my knowledge of beer styles and beer tasting and all that. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, it's a good skill to have. So if you're new to brewing, definitely recommend it. Or just even like the BJCP app is just like free. You can just read about every beer style that's out there and what goes into a good Lichtenheiner or something like that. All those obscure ones, those are the best ones. Yeah. What takes up your time when you're not at the brewery? Are you able to escape some time and do some fun things?
Yeah, it's nice. We've got like a really good brew crew these days, so I don't actually get my boots on super often anymore. So it affords me a little more free time to do some of the other things that I love. So we live in a great place here. Lots of like, you know, world-class ski resorts around. So I like to ski at Lake Louise in the winters. Recently got myself into mountain biking this past summer, and yeah, super fun. Do a lot of camping in the summer.
We were joking recently about how nobody gets into mountain biking as they're older.
It's
it
something
always ends
that
up as an injury.
Yeah,
which is unfortunately something you just dealt with.
Yeah,
yeah, I dealt with, you know, not quite a broken rib, but pretty close to broken rib, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not young anymore, so might take things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I don't know. You get that adrenaline rush skiing. I wanted something similar, you know, when the weather's nice.
In this, yeah, fair enough.
But I love being outdoors. It's so gorgeous out here with, you know, and being so close to the mountains. I try and get into the mountains as much as I can.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's a good thing to do. Sweet. Well, thanks for doing this podcast with us. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about. I think we covered it all.
We covered a lot. Yeah, covered it all.
Great.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to support Cabin, buy their beer, help Jonas go skiing, where can everybody get Cabin? What's the best place in Alberta? There's these brick walls between BC and here, so
Yeah.
Yeah, we self-distribute. So most liquor stores in Calgary will have it. A good number in Edmonton, north and south of Calgary, Lethbridge. We use a provincial distributor, Liquor Connect. So if you don't see it in your store, you can, anybody can order it in.
yeah.
But
everybody request.
Yeah. Put your request
everybody
in.
bring it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've
And
got a lot of.
you won't be let down.
Here.
Like this is insane. Like the fact that you're doing that volume of beer locally, self-distributed, is it's obviously not because you're just all marketing.
Yeah,
that's good beer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Sweet. And if you're listening and you're in Alberta, come on, keep on listening to the podcast. We talk to primarily BC brewers, but we're starting to stray outside of our provincial guidelines. The AGLC can't stop us on this one. So here we are. We talked to brewers in BC and Alberta and all over this great nation about making beer. So tune into other episodes of Why This Beer. You can follow us on Instagram as well at Why This Beer, and on Facebook if you're one of those people that's older like myself. And we post the episodes on YouTube. You can watch them there. Anything else, Azlan?
I think that's all.
Oh, you can buy our beer as well. Help support us. Some neighborhood brewing beer wherever you can find it in BC, and same with Main Street Brewing Beer. Help support Azlan and I as well. And thanks, Jonas, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Sweet. Yeah. Great. Until next time, guys. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.